Welcome to the Perceived Exertion podcast. Today, my guest on this week's podcast is Caitlin Tootill, aka Re-Nourished Nutrition on Instagram. Cait is a registered nutritionist. Good to have you on the podcast, Cait. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me here. Yeah, I'm really good. I'm really excited to kind of be on here and talk about nutrition and like different lifestyle things that basically I just enjoy talking about to everybody, any opportunity I get. Yeah, so thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Nutrition's a topic that's come up a couple of times, well, quite a few times on the podcast, and in particular, people are good at eating, but less good at kind of understanding how to eat and what to eat when they're training. So it's a really vital topic. It's one of those topics that I think will be very interesting for the listeners. Should we start with some introductions? Would you like to explain yourself? And as I mentioned, you're a nutritionist. Just explain your background and your interests.
Yeah, so I got into nutrition quite a kind of convoluted way. So when I was growing up, I was a swimmer. It took me through all around Europe. It's how I kind of traveled when I was younger. And then it took me over to the US, which is where I went to university in Arkansas. So I got to swim all around the US, which was an incredible experience. But obviously, like as you're competing and in a level, I'm sure as you find with triathlon, you see people who go through the same training programs performing differently. And obviously, so I was studying kind of biomechanics and kinesiology over there. I was like, okay, so yes, there is that bodily component. People are built differently. Training is going to affect them differently. But also you look at the nutrition, you look at how that supports people or doesn't support people, as the case might be. So as you said, it's such an important area, which is massively misunderstood. And I think because it's massively misunderstood, people see it as quite a big issue. So my aim as a nutritional therapist is to help people kind of debunk all the misinformation, or kind of find, I don't think it's so much misinformation, but I think it's conflicting information because everyone's different. So I see nutrition as a very personalized subject. So for what works for me might not work for you, but it might work for somebody else. So it's finding what works for you, how it works for you, and incorporating it into your life. So it's not a real unrealistic diet to follow, because no one's ever going to follow it. So I think helping people understand their bodies is my number one goal, helping them understand food and how it affects their bodies, and then how to eat to feel amazing, because so many people are eating to train and they're like, yeah, great, cool, I can smash out 3 sessions a week, I can smash out 5 sessions a week, but they're not enjoying it, they're not enjoying what's on their plate, and they're seeing food just as that fuel, which closes off like the rest of like the mental, the emotional, the spirit, like spiritual. There's so much that food is in our world today that is kind of missed, and I want to help people understand that bigger picture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It's come a long way from sporting, but I still have my like feet in those sporting roots and stuff. So I quite like incorporating that into my nutritional therapy practice, which I think makes it quite nice because it's a bit.
Well, I think it's really important actually. I think there's nutrition for those that have want to balance their lifestyle and make sure that they're eating the right things, but there's also the whole topic of eating to fuel your exertion, which is equally important. So what got you into nutrition as a topic and as a specialism?
So I had a lecturer in the US who, she was lovely, she was absolutely great, but she was adamant. This was about the time that coconut oil was like the new superfood, and she turned around and she was like, coconut oil is not very good for you, I don't understand. And I was like, well, how can you say this? You're my lecturer. I'm supposed you're the person who's assessing me and helping, like getting me through university. How can you be saying something so different to other people? So I was like, okay, hang on a minute. So then I kind of started reading it, and you get into the research and you fall down a wormhole. I'm sure you've probably found it as well. You read one thing and then you read another, and then like 2 hours later, you're still like reading papers and you're like, this just doesn't add up. So I wanted to find why it was conflicting. Was it just different people? Was it just different like aspects of health? It turns out she was reading quite outdated research, because there's been a lot kind of on fats and what's good for you, what's not good for you, there's a lot of like saturated fat being bad for you, but then in some places it's good for you. But it's all balance, and I think that's what's missing. So I found the place that I just graduated from in London, the Institute for Optimum Nutrition. So we're associated with Portsmouth University, and they look at it. They don't tell you the answers. They don't tell you what's good and what's bad. They give you the skills to kind of go out and find it, which is what I then want to pass on to other people. But yes, that's kind of how I got into it. And
Right.
then obviously,
it's interesting you say that about the kind of working out what the truth is. I mean, there is a lot. It's not misinformation, but it's careless information that's provided to people that everyone has a right to a view and everyone has a view. But I've always been a firm believer you have to look at the argument and look at the data that supports it. I turned vegan not because I watched a video. I turned vegan because I studied the health benefits of being vegan and how that may help with sports and how it may help with kind of weight control and things like that. And certainly there was lots of conflicting information. There was a Netflix program which was very one-sided on the veganism side. And that was definitely not the source of my kind of switching. I'd looked into various things. So it's interesting you say that, and it's good that you're kind of wanting to make sure that people have the right information and help them to make decisions for themselves.
how did you find being vegan? How did it affect kind of your training and your energy and everything?
So the important thing for me was not getting the placebo effect. Because the first thing I did when I switched to being vegan 2 years ago was didn't go looking at improvements in the way that my kind of performance improved through things like whether I could run faster, whether I recover faster. I just kind of switched to veganism and then kind of just looked over time to see whether there was improvements in kind of things like recovery, but not in a kind of, I was very conscious that I would be looking for improvements because of the fact that everyone said there will be improvements being vegan. But I definitely felt better. Recovery wise, I had a battle with injury for best part of 18 months. I tore an Achilles. I had problems with hip. I had that addressed through physiotherapy. But I found that my recovery time was a lot more improved as a vegan. And I just noticed subtle things like I wasn't getting the same sorts of aches and DOMs that I was getting, after heavy training. So I definitely noticed a difference. Whether or not it was down to veganism is there was a number of factors in my life that changed over time. I had worked with physiotherapists to address biomechanical issues. But I definitely felt better being vegan, and do feel better being vegan. And I think things have improved over the last 2 years to make it easier to be vegan. Certainly restaurants are now addressing it, and supermarkets are addressing it, and much more than they were.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot more choice. I think it is just being like that, like, as you said, open-minded and kind of not jumping on the roller coaster, if that makes sense, kind of going at it nice and slow, nice and controlled, and making sure that you've got that balance as well. I know a lot of people will go into veganism or being vegan like, yes, I'm going to do this, and they'll eat fruits and vegetables and for a couple of weeks, and then they start to get lazy, and you see people eating and it's just chip butty, and you're like, that is vegan. You're missing some things though.
Definitely feel that you shouldn't rely on vegan food from supermarkets, packaged foods and processed foods, because they won't give you the benefit, and I do neglect that a little bit, with busy lifestyle. It's something I definitely need to improve on, is making food from scratch more than I do.
Just throwing some rice and beans in a pan and a whole bunch of vegetables.
yeah, exactly.
But that's such a, whether it's vegan or omnivore diet, and that's something that I would recommend, just having like that variety of like nuts and seeds, beans, rice, grains, because it's just got like the fiber and everything that's just going to look after you. Well, you don't need to be vegan. You don't. Either way is absolutely fine, but including those sorts of foods have an incredible effect on your health. And I think that's it's whatever your diet is, it's just how. Yeah,
definitely agree. I think the other thing as well is I didn't go straight to vegan. I was a vegetarian for 6 years and just made the switch, which I thought would be easy, a very easy switch to cut out dairy, which I've never been that good with anyway in terms of eating dairy anyway. So but yeah, the consciousness of kind of why. I mean, there is a theme on the podcast about this kind of making sure you understand what the why is. That's the fundamental point. Same thing with nutrition, I guess. I mean, is that something that you find with your clients you have to address at an early stage around why are they coming to me? Why do they need, what is their why, basically?
Yeah, so when I have someone come and see me, we have several sessions, or we have quite a nice introductory period where I find out what they want, why they want it, and how they want to get there. And I think with that, it helps me understand them, but it also helps them understand themselves as well. It's all well and good somebody saying, I want to lose this amount of weight, or I want my digestion to get better. It's like, okay, why? How is that affecting you? So when they understand those driving factors, I understand the driving factors. So it helps me tailor a program to them, but it also helps them realize their goals. And there's something about saying it out loud that can reinforce it into your head. And people think, oh yeah, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do the other. But actually saying it cements it, and they're like, no, I am going to do that. And then having that understanding, I think, the old saying, like, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, teach a man how to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. I think my goal is not to work with people long term. I run 12-week program, 6 to 12-week programs, and teach people why it's not a long-term thing for me. I don't think I can be if people want me. But my goal is to give people the tools to understand their goals and to understand how to get there. So when I'm talking through a protocol, a plan, I'll explain why I'm doing it, and I'll send them the information, I'll send them the research and say, you don't have to read it, but it's there if you want it, if you're interested. So then when they, like a year down the line, 2 years down the line, they're like, oh, actually, I did see her and she said this and it was really helpful. This worked and this is why it worked. So when someone comes up to them and says, oh, why are you eating fat? Fat makes you fat. They'll be like, actually, no, fat is an essential part of my body and I can't function without it. My hormones won't exist. My cells won't exist. And I literally cannot function without it. Your joint's aching because you're not eating fat. And then they can walk away and they, actually, I am confident in my knowledge. I'm confident with how this works. And I'm confident eating my full fat yogurt and ice cream and know what part it's playing in their health, and then turn around and say, okay, my joints are hurting. Maybe I'm having too much of something else. And it's that understanding, I think, as you said, it's that control and that power over your own health. And I think giving people that back, as opposed to just saying there's a pill, is something that's so important, because it gives you that responsibility and ultimately that control and power to say, no, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I guess in the same way as anyone that's in coaching, you have an element of being a psychologist and have to be a psychologist. You have to understand the human psyche and how people tick, otherwise you wouldn't get the best out of them. And the other point you made around kind of making yourself redundant is, if you're a good coach, if you're a good nutritionist, you're teaching people to actually change their lifestyle. At some point, they need to, go fly for themselves. It's not. So it's really, it's a really interesting point. It's the same thing with the coaching model, isn't it? You as a coach, you'd want to make sure that there's the element of coachability, so their ability to receive information, take it on board and do what they're being told, or understand why they're doing it and therefore doing what they're being told. and the element of then being coached to an extent that they've learned so much that they can go away and just not need to have to be coached anymore.
Every coach's dream, I think. Well, that's what I think. That is the ultimate end goal. Obviously, if you are carrying on working, you want to keep on progressing, but ultimately, like in a school, like in university, teachers don't want you there to always learn. They want you to kind of get to the end of the year, just go be free. And I think that's like anybody in any form of like education, coaching, personal development. That's you would be a very bad educator if you didn't want that for your athletes, students, whatever.
Your why is you want to help people, and have a deep rooted kind of important objective of wanting to help people that makes you feel good. Similar for me. My background in law, and the reason why I wanted to become a barrister was because I wanted to help people. That then also transfers to the sporting context of kind of wanting to help people with lifestyle and changing their lifestyle. And what it's not going to help it. You have to the whole aspect I love about coaching, about what coaching represents in the wider sense, is people will make mistakes. People may not follow instructions, and they may go off and do something completely different. But if they can understand what they've done wrong or why it's not worked, and then be able to feed that back, that must be something that is an important aspect of that loop of kind of you as a nutritionist understanding, why that person hasn't followed what you've asked them to follow, or why they're not doing what they're doing.
Oh, my inbox is full of those all the time. So it is, and I think that's an important thing that I'll always explain to clients when they start. They're like, okay, it is a personalized process. We're not going to get it right first time, and that's okay. You can't break your body. So that trial and error, finding what works, finding what's maybe deficient and stuff, it is a process. And as you know, with training, probably with yourself and your athletes, it's never going to work first time. If you try a new training method, it might work amazingly for some and not for others.
Yeah.
So it is a constant, and I'll email with my clients and we catch up once a month, and we just felt good, what's felt bad. I get them to keep like a food diary for like a random 3 days. We'll keep feeding back. We'll look at the mood. We'll look at every aspect of their life, their energy. And if something's not working, we'll change it. And it's not a failure of the plan. It's not a failure on their part or my part. It's just something that's not worked. And I think that's getting into that attitude, that mindset is a really important thing that I try and establish really early, so they don't turn around and say, this isn't working, Cait. It's not going well. They're like, okay, right, let's look at why. And it's going back to that why again. And it's so important because then as it goes through the programs, you see them saying, right, Cait, this isn't working. So I tried this and it is working. And when I read those sorts of emails, I'm like, oh. And it is like a mini win. And it's like one of those things that you go and like you dance around the kitchen and you're like, they don't need me.
Yeah, I agree.
Which
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I'm sure you get that with your athletes and also with this podcast as well. So
yeah, I think the for me the kind of key aspect of one of the I'll take for example my children. I think there is a general, because we now have everything on an app, because we have everything, you can order something and arrive tomorrow. That whole kind of working hard for something, I think, is a really difficult thing to teach. People think that do a few squats in the gym and their whole physiology is going to change overnight. It can take years. And the same thing with nutrition, same thing with lifestyle. I have probably battled with weight for 20 years, and only in the last 4 years that I've kind of worked out what works best for me. And it has been hard work. It's been hard work of kind of making sure I've got balance between physical exercise and eating the right foods. But as well as that, I realized that certain things aren't going to progress, certainly at my age, but there are limitations. And I think I wonder whether you find the same, whether they're an understanding of limitations and setting those, up front as to kind of what the timescales look like in terms of how someone will, if they want to lose weight, it's not going to be something that just takes a week of starving yourself. It's actually eating the right foods and changing a lifestyle, as opposed to kind of doing something a couple of times and then reverting back to previous.
Yeah, so I work a lot with, I do work with people on weight loss. I also work a lot with people on burnout and fatigue. And something I like putting to them, I say, okay, when do you notice yourself kind of start feeling tired or burnt out? And I'll say, oh, a year ago, a couple of months ago. And I'm like, okay, what was it that built up to that? And they're like, oh, I've had this job for 5 or 10 years. And I'm like, okay, so this is a problem that's been building up for 5, 10, maybe 15, 20 years. Yeah, okay. Do you think it can be fixed in a couple of weeks? No, probably not. No. And then, okay, good. So it is something that's taken years to build up. If you had stress and fatigue, lack of sleep, poor diet for years and years and years and years and years, it's not something that's going to be turned around in a matter of weeks. You might see some improvements. There might be some things that kind of pop out in the first week, but it's something that we have to do nice and slowly, because if you shock your body, it's going to go the complete opposite way. And that's not what we want. We want it to be slow. We want it to be steady, because then that's something that's going to last. We're going to put down those foundations. We're going to look at lifestyle and diet, and it's going to be something that lasts. I don't want to give you some quick fix, because a quick fix tends to kind of be, yeah, there's that week, like you said, starving yourself for a week. You have an event at the end of the week. Great. Then you yo-yo back and you start up. Your weight goes to more than it was beforehand, because it's that restriction. So you want to have things nice and low, nice and slow, and build it up so it's sustainable. And I think that's the more authentic way of doing it, as opposed to just that like quick, snappy, made in a day, gone in a day. You don't want that. You want a lifestyle change, and that's ultimately what myself and my colleagues, we're all trying to advocate. We're all looking at that lifestyle adjustment. It goes back to the education. It goes back to understanding the why, and then how you're going to approach that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's very similar to the way that gyms operate, isn't it? In terms of how many people in January join a gym and then not go to the gym after the second week. You're not going to build a lifestyle unless you actually want to make changes, and that involves consistently addressing that part of your lifestyle that you want to change, and that whole kind of holistic approach to, like you said, around stress management, it all comes into it. The amount of sleep you have, it's not just about what you eat, it's about how much you sleep, how much time you have away from the stresses of work or the other stresses. Making time for yourself is a really important aspect of kind of how you actually build that lifestyle. So do you don't cover just the nutrition side, you also look at the other parts of the lifestyle?
So typically, obviously we do look a lot at nutrition, because I think nutrition can have a massive impact on everything. But I will never give a plan that is just nutrition. I will look at a plan. I tend to have maybe 3 to 4, maybe 5 at push if I think they can manage it, nutrition recommendations. I'll have 2 lifestyle recommendations, and then another one. So you will go back with almost a kind of 50-50, 60-40 plan of nutrition and lifestyle, because it is so important. There's so much into it. So it could be how we eat. So do you eat on the go? Do you sit down? Do you cook? Do you chew your food? It might be something to do with that. And then looking at that relaxation, because I don't think it's possible to take all the stress out of someone's life. It's not a sustainable way of doing it. So I will not say, okay, that's a stressful event. Don't do that. We'll look at how to manage those stressful events. which I think is a more sustainable way of doing it. So instead of saying, okay, your job is stressful, don't go to work, that's not sustainable for somebody. People can't do that. So, okay, your job is stressful. Acknowledge that. Realize that it might take some time out of you, and we'll look at how to work around that. So how do you de-stress? Do you have breaks in your day? Do you take breaks? On your lunch break, do you sit and work at the computer? When you come home, what do you do? What are your hobbies? What do you de-stress as? And we'll look at building those in as much as possible, because it is a lifestyle change. So it might be going for a walk, going for a swim, having a bath, singing, dance. My favorite one at the moment is just dancing around and cooking, because it has that, when you sing, you dance, you've got that parasympathetic stimulation, which puts your body in that, you've got fight and flight and rest and digest. So it gets your body in that rest and digest state. You smell the food you're cooking. It's quite a wholesome experience if you're like cooking with your kids, cooking with your partner. You get them cooking, it's family time. It's helping them understand food. You're smelling the food. It's a really nice, and then you all sit down and eat together. And I think that's quite wholesome, as you said, like holistic approach. It's not always feasible every single day of the week. On Saturday nights, for example, things like that. So I quite like doing that and finding out what my clients enjoy, and then helping them schedule that into their lives as well, because I think it's so important as we get older to have hobbies.
Yes.
And it's something that people don't realize, but I think it just breaks up your life a little bit, so you're not just kind of getting up, going to work, coming home, getting up, going to work, and because that's just a bit monotonous.
And I think that's been quite difficult during lockdown. Still, as we move to more remote working, I haven't been in my office for 21 months, so my office has been here. And so, I've just recently realised that, a lot of the stress that I experience isn't because of work. I've done the same job for the last 20 odd years. It's actually the inability to switch off from work. And it's something that's really difficult. If you're working from home all the time, it's very easy to work quite late. And I do work quite late because there's no physical need to go and catch a train. There's no need to actually, the great thing about commuting is as soon as you step on the train, you're on a journey to home. And, that's something I think people should work on, is that kind of, that ability to switch off from work and have some type of transition event that happens. It might be your dinner. So you go off and cook your dinner, or it might be, there's a program on TV or the news, or just do something that kind of gives you that ability to transition from work to home. And that's a really hard thing that's happened as a result of lockdown.
Yeah, like you said, without having that commute, even in the mornings, that walking outside, so many people have lost that. They go from their bedroom to the kitchen to the work desk. There's no outside, there's no sunlight, there's something, I think it blows all the cobwebs away, but it helps to reset your circadian rhythm. And like you said, it's that transition period. So even walking, I got my clients to walk out the door, round the block, or even around the garden and back in again, because it's still that transition period. Yeah. It's like, right, I've left work now. Turn off the computer, turn off your email, and kind of go from there. But yeah, I think it's something that needs attention to people who have got that working from home, to get that balance, because if you're working in your living room or if you're working in your bedroom, that's your space for relaxing, and if people have lost that, then it is one of those kind of like stress escapes that's gone. So yeah, I think it's absolutely thing to be aware of and pay attention to, in my opinion.
You specialize in microbiome balance. Can you just, I'm really interested in this area. Could you just explain what that is and why it's important?
So your microbiome, you've got, you have microorganisms, so bacteria living all on your body. They're on your skin, they're in your mouth, all the way down your digestive tract. And I like, they're all very important, but specifically in your gut. So they live in your large intestine. They help digest the food. There's a massive kind of, it's called the gut-brain axis. So through this, this microbiome can affect your mood. You've got neurotransmitters, so serotonin and dopamine produced in your gut. There's a large amount of your immune system in your gut. They help produce essential vitamins that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get from food. They are a massive producer of things like short chain fatty acids and all sorts that can help recovery. They just help your body work properly, or as they should. So they're really, really important. They can have massive benefits to us. Unfortunately, the Western diet, in a typical Western diet, is quite damaging to this microbiome. So it's full of factors like sugar and alcohol and medications. Like if people smoke, sweeteners, highly processed foods, there's so much that can cause what we call dysbiosis, which just disrupts the colonies. They upset them, they kill them off, and they leave space for unhealthy bacteria. So what we call pathogenic, which are the ones that are going to cause like stomach ache, bloating, gas. They can have negative impact on our mood. They can knock our immune system, which at the moment we really don't want, coming off the back of the pandemic. So I think they've got a massive part to play in health of society today, that is massively misunderstood or not as understood as it maybe should be, because it's quite a newish emerging area. So I quite like just talking about it, and I think it's a massive impact for people who, for example, have like IBS kind of symptoms, and doctors say, yeah, you've got IBS. There you go. And it's not an answer. It's not helping them understand how they're going to improve their digestion. It's not helping them understand how they're going to lift their mood. If somebody is anxious or depressed, saying, oh, you've got IBS, it gives them an answer, but it doesn't help, if that makes sense. So by looking at people's microbiomes, by nurturing these colonies, and by adding in food and fiber, like so probiotic foods, probiotic supplements, fermented foods, fiber, whole grains, and taking away some of the processed foods, you transform people's guts. You give them more energy. You give them a stronger immune system. You give them that more positive outlook on life. And they start producing that serotonin and dopamine in their guts. So they feel that pleasure, and they start to enjoy food as opposed to it being a bit of a battle, because it can be absolutely debilitating for some people. So that's...
I say people can go most of their lives with having this imbalance, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so common that people are just like, oh, this food upsets me, that food upsets me. And they cut out and they limit what foods they eat, just because, quite understandably, because if it is like bloating or causes constipation or something, it's not pleasant, so you're not going to want to eat it. But by sorting that, you can open up a whole massive world of food that they've just avoided. And so I think it gives, I like to think it improves quality of life and just day-to-day function. I think it's just a massive area that it's really easy to kind of manipulate and kind of change and improve.
It's really interesting. My daughter was we took my daughter when she was very young to someone to look at allergies, an allergy specialist, and he was talking, and I thought at the time it was a bit it was a strange subject to talk about, but sugar and people having a sweet tooth is actually caused by the actual organisms that are inside the gut. And my daughter has a sweet tooth. She's also got quite a few allergies, and I read up on the subject, and it was like, it's really interesting that people who say they have a sweet tooth is actually caused by a craving that's caused by organisms that are in the stomach.
Yeah. Oh, I got a massive sweet tooth. But it is, again, so sugar is very addictive. That's one part of it. You've got obviously that connection with dopamine, and obviously dopamine in your brain, dopamine in your stomach as well. There's that massive kind of addictive component to it. But you do also have cultures that can affect your mood, that can affect your cravings. So they can be like, yeah, sugar. You've got that kind of double-edged sword that's kind of like looking at you, like trying to get you to eat that sugar. But by balancing that microbiome, by encouraging it, by feeding it with fiber, whole foods, kind of maybe stepping back on that like addictive side of sugar a little bit, you can moderate it and balance it. So you're not just living your life on sugar. It is a big step to do. It is possible, but it does take a while. But yeah, it's incredible how much influence they can have on our bodies, on our minds, on our systems, without us even realizing. I think it's fascinating.
Yes, it is. It is really, really interesting, and it's kind of one of those areas that I guess isn't really, as you say, it's under researched and probably not as respected as kind of the classic kind of nutritionist. You know, how much protein, how much carbs should I be eating?
Yeah. I think it is researched, yes, because what we do is very evidence-based, but it's not as glamorous potentially as other aspects. But I think it's got a massive impact, and I think certainly in the coming years it will be a lot more well known and well publicized. That's what I'm hoping, at least, because people are kind of like cottoning on to that gut-brain axis, and your gut actually is like your second brain, and it asks, it's kind of like it's a very big driver in what we eat, as you said, what we crave, and so many other aspects of our body. I am hoping it is going to come a lot more into the media.
Definitely.
Well,
just in terms of key considerations for people that are perhaps exploring their own nutrition, have you got some tips of areas that perhaps you see as quite common areas that people should be concentrating on?
Yes. So things like I touched on Ultrapro. Actually, I'm not going to start with this one. Variety. Adding in as much variety as possible to your diet is the best thing you can do. So I like to say going into the supermarket every week and picking up a new vegetable or a couple of new vegetables that you've not cooked with before. So it could be like aubergine or Swiss chard or different salad leaves. So if you always go for the iceberg lettuce, pick up a different one. Pick up some rocket, pick up some like romaine hearts, pick up some just different colors. Getting that variety is going to feed your gut bacteria. They're going to be different tastes. It's going to be different nutrients for your body. And it's just going to give them like an absolute field day. They like variety. So if you always eat chicken, maybe mix up turkey or pork or lamb or beef. If you don't eat like beans and lentils, maybe try making a lentil pasta sauce as opposed to like a bolognese pasta sauce. So variety is my main absolute key start point. The other one, which I almost started with, but I don't like starting with eliminating stuff. I like starting by adding stuff in. Is looking. So the second one would be looking at ultra processed foods. So things like super like white bread that you make a chip butty out of is great once in a while. But ideally, you want to try and kind of limit it or take it out altogether. Things like takeaways or like fast food, cakes and stuff, great in moderation. But when you're first kind of looking at nurturing your gut microbiome, they can do more, they do the damage. So you want to have a flourishing, diverse, strong microbiome before adding them back in again. I'm not saying eliminate them for good, because I don't believe in taking foods out permanently. It is very much strengthening, building that resilience in your microbiome before adding them back in. When you've got that, they can cope. They're like, yeah, okay, it's not great, it's not what we really want, but we can manage it. The third one would be fiber. It's amazing. So whole grains, beans, pulses, legumes, things like that, full of fiber. And this is food for that microbiome. So any kind of vegetables, again, that variety is really good at just feeding and building that resilience up in your microbiome. They can cause, if you're not used to eating them, you can have some discomfort to begin with. And just because your microbiome is not used to it, so hands up, it might be a bit discomfort. If you're not used to cooking lentils or beans or chickpeas. You can have some discomfort, but cooking them and soaking them really helps. But yeah, it's just mixing in whole foods, cooking from scratch as much as possible. So that would be kind of on the nutrition side of things. I don't know if you want a lifestyle one as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to say that's really, really useful tips. I think I fail on 2 of those, but variety is something that I, as a kind of athlete, I'm terrible at and need to improve on. I tend to eat the same things repeatedly because I know they work, especially in a training plan. But variety is something I do eat lots of fiber, but probably not as much of the kind of cooking it and preparing it myself that I'd like to. So yeah, there's 2 takeaways there for me. I don't eat fast food at all, really. I never have really, but there are 2 areas that I think I definitely will take on board, and I'm sure the listeners will as well.
I was going to say, if you are kind of not sure about how to get into it, meal planning is really good. So we here, me, my family, my partner, we all sit down and we make a meal plan. We say, okay, what does everyone want to eat? We'll say like a dish. So it could be falafel, it could be like lamb kofta, it could be bolognese, cottage pie, whatever it is. And we'll meal plan it. We'll put it in like one evening a week. So then there's like leftovers for lunch. And then we've always got things like oats, eggs, sourdough toast, smoothies. And for breakfast, so having those stock up essentials and planning is really a really good way of doing it, and sitting down all together and saying, right, favorite meals, what do you want? Have something that everyone wants to eat. So if somebody doesn't like say carbonara or something, they really like lentil dal, they'd be like, hey, yeah, maybe not, you don't want this one, but what you want tomorrow is a really nice way of doing it, because then you can take that meal plan from the week before and say, okay, we had all these meals, let's find 7 new ones. So it's a really good way of building up that variety. Takes some time, takes some weeks to build up that recipe bank. But we write it all down. So then we're like, oh, I've no idea what to cook. You can look back and say, I've got stuff for that.
That's really good.
So that helps.
Yeah, that's really good. And lifestyle tips?
Sitting down and eating is my favorite. And a lot of people sit in front of the television or kind of eat and dash off. But sitting down maybe 2 or 3 meals a week, or 7 if possible, sitting down, taking time, eating and talking as a family or as a house, or even like just eating and enjoying what you're eating if you're by yourself, is so important. It helps your body rest and digest. It helps you enjoy your food. You've got that cephalic side of digestion, so the taste, the chewing, the smell, all of those chemicals are going to be produced in your gut. So important. So that would be my first and most important lifestyle recommendation.
I totally agree with you. Again, working from home, I do actually take time to go away from the desk and sit in the kitchen and eat, and often that'll be with someone that's in the house. One of the kids will be at home, or my wife will be at home. We'll be together. But yeah, it is something you do neglect. I've never eaten in front of the TV at all. It's not for many years since I was a student. But it is important to have a dining table. It is important to sit at the dining table with the family. I agree, totally agree.
That was a bad habit when I was competing or training. You'd come in really early and you'd be so exhausted. You'd have your plate, you'd flop on the sofa in front of the TV, and it takes away, like you get into a very monotonous routine. Food is just fuel. There's no enjoyment. There's none of that holistic side of it. It's just food is fuel. So
We
it
need
isn't
we
slip into.
we need to be more Mediterranean. Have a couple of hours for lunch, and not just to eat the food, but also to digest it and eat it slowly.
Yeah, have a nice siesta after.
Absolutely.
Other.
Just in terms of kind of the athletic side of things, so the sporting side of things, are there any tips around nutrition that someone that's training, for triathlon or running, or any key tips around what people should be thinking about in terms of their nutrition?
Yes, so this might not be relevant to everybody. Coming off the back of when I was competing, it took me a long time to realize that nutrition was an individual thing. So I would see other athletes maybe not eating as much as I felt I needed to, which meant that I didn't eat as much as I needed to. So my advice, or from my experience and from what I've seen in other athletes, is to eat when you're hungry, to make sure that you are eating, obviously, that balanced diet, that variety. Make sure you have got protein, fats, carbs, all three of them, most important, all three of them at every meal. But eat when you're hungry, and it doesn't matter if the person next to you isn't eating. Maybe they're not hungry, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't eat. When you're training, your body is working differently to other people's bodies. And I think the sooner athletes, especially female athletes, realize that growing up through school, through university, it was a massive impact. And I think that's why a lot of girls fall out of sport. Well, one of the reasons people fall out of sport, because you eat to fuel yourself. And it is so key that your body is your body. When you're hungry, it's trying to tell you something. And so long as you're putting in those three balanced macronutrients, sorry, it will work, and it will do for you what you're asking it to. Because that's that symbiotic relationship. It's asking you to do something, you're asking it to do something. I think it's so important. And moving away from, but they're not eating, I shouldn't need to. Or they are eating, I need to. If you're not hungry, it's getting that relationship. And I think both for athletes and for just general people, it's a very important thing to grasp. I don't know how relevant it is to everybody listening, but
no, I think the element, I've always said that the element of working out what works well for you is trial and error with nutrition. And you have to determine for yourself what it is that you need for fuel. And I've certainly had lots of, I mentioned it before on the podcast, that I've had lots of trial and error of kind of the things that work and things that don't work. And it's taken a long time to kind of work out, things like taking gels on runs. And because I see other people, and because coaches at the time say, make sure you fuel, take a gel with you, and it becomes part of the psychology of running, that it doesn't, not so much on the bike, but I will say to myself, I need a gel, and I don't actually wait for the wait or anticipate needing fuel, because we can't, because at that point we've kind of, at the point that we realize that we need it, it's too late. But I have worked out that actually I don't need as much as I had been previously. So 6 months ago, changed my diet completely, changed my approach to fueling, and it seems to work just as much, just by testing things. So for example, I'd have isotonic sugary drink during a long turbo session on the bike, and I just thought, well, see what happens if I don't have the sugar in that, and just have the isotonic element, and had no negative side effect to it. So then worked out, actually I don't really think I need it at all. And I think that's the approach that people coming into, say, triathlon, coming into running, need to work out for themselves, in terms of there is no magic answer. Reading a magazine is helpful to guide you in the right direction of things like protein, and carbohydrates, but you need to work that out for yourself and actually do it by just going out and see how you feel when you run.
Yeah, exactly. See how it affects you, see how you feel the next day, 2 days after, how your next training session is, mood wise, concentration wise, how you do at work. Like if you notice those sorts of things, then it's a lot easier to kind of realize your own progress, what affects you in different ways. And it's the same with food. So with training, with food, notice those things, see how your digestion is, see how your bowel movements are, see just all of those things that might be affected, see what happens. And if you like it, if you don't like it, I know certainly on women on the hormonal side of things, that's another layer of variables. So see what you're craving, see what you want, and then it affects everything. And as you said, there is no one right answer, which I think is the best part of it. Most people are just like, oh my God, that just makes it so difficult. It's like, no, that's the adventure. That's the fun part. It's this massive journey where you understand yourself better. You learn more about yourself. And you can make these massive impacts on your life. And you can keep making them, because it's such a complicated run that it is literally, I like to call it the journey of a lifetime. Then it feels a bit cheesy, but it genuinely is.
It's true. That's why I love physiology as a subject anyway. The science behind the human body is absolutely fascinating, and the thing for me that makes it even more fascinating is you're introducing the endurance sport into why your body does things as the way it does, and how it does things, and how you can improve, for example, your anaerobic and aerobic system, the types of training that you need to do. I find all of those sort of areas really, really interesting, and they do work, because that's why we do it. But until you actually get the balance between the amount of sleep you have, how much stress you have in your life, what foods you eat, you can do as much interval running as possible. You're not going to improve unless you actually address the other areas, because they're all part of the engine that makes the vehicle work.
Until you look at the whole system. Yeah. It's so important.
It is really important. I mean, sleep is one of those areas that I have real deficiency on. I've tried to improve it, and it's something that kind of I have to address, because I'm pretty sure it does have an impact on kind of training. But it is an area that I'm quite deficient on. Are there any kind of tips that you have around kind of with your clients around kind of sleep and stress management?
Yes. So if you're interested, there's an amazing book by, I think he's called Matthew Walker, called Why We Sleep. Such a good read. He devoted basically his life. He's a researcher, a PhD researcher, and his whole life's research is on sleep. And he's put it all into a book, and he's put it into, it's a really nicely written, easy book to kind of digest. So definitely recommend that one. I would recommend looking at that kind of pre-sleep wind down period. So before you sleep, I like to set a timeline to say, right, 10 o'clock I'm going to bed. So 9 o'clock I turn all screens off. In that hour, you have a bath, read a book, slowly wind everything down. But from kind of 8 o'clock, you want things to kind of back off a little bit. So if you are watching TV, I would watch something nice and relaxing, not something like an action movie or something. Turn it off at 9 o'clock. So you've got that hour of just relaxing, folding, washing, having a bath, reading a book, something quiet, something slow, something gentle. And then looking at things like caffeine. Caffeine obviously has a half-life of 8 hours, more or less, which means it doesn't disappear by 8 hours. It halves its quantity. So when people say, oh no, caffeine doesn't affect me, I was always one of those people who swore that caffeine didn't affect me, didn't have any impact on me whatsoever, until I got it out. And I know everyone says that, but when I got it out, I started sleeping better. I started feeling more alive. And then every time now I have caffeine, I will sit there and I'll be like, and my heart will be going, and it's crazy the effect you just don't realize.
Yeah.
So I advise clients to limit caffeine to the morning, so before 12 o'clock, and then just stick to decaf. It's easy enough to have a decaf coffee. You can get lovely decaf coffee these days. There are alternatives. There's a company called Bear Cacao who do an amazing like roasted cacao beans, and you literally make it like coffee, and it tastes sort of chocolatey, sort of malty. It's not sweet, but it's packed full of magnesium. So that would be the other thing. If people are struggling to sleep, if they can't relax, we'd look at some form of magnesium, L-theanine, rhodiola supplement, which are 3 things that help promote that relaxation. As they rest your muscles, relax, slow down your body, and stimulate that parasympathetic nervous system side of things. So there's a couple of different supplements that I would kind of play around with. And there's a really good one from Motion Nutrition, which is their unplug, something like that. It's in the blue bottle. So that's a really good one. There's a couple of other ones that are really nice. But just looking at those calming aspects of it can really help manage stress. And when you get on top of the sleep, your body is more resilient and dynamic in stressful situations. So it's giving your body those tools to deal with life stresses instead of taking the stresses out of life.
Yeah, I mean, the type of sleep is really important, isn't it? I mean, I read about kind of the research around hormone production, and the deeper the sleep, the more hormones are able to be produced, which help with recovery, help with your mental stimulus in terms of how you set up for the day. So, when the saying "I got out the wrong side of the bed" is actually quite accurate. It's there is an element of what the type of quality of sleep you've had and the rhythm that you got into that actually fuels your day, and it's as important as what you eat in terms of energy.
And it can have a massive impact on what we want to eat as well. So when you sleep, your body increases its receptiveness to things like insulin, things like your neurotransmitters, your mitochondria become more effective. They say if you are
antibody production.
Yeah, so your immune system and everything. I can't remember the exact amount of sleep that you miss out on, but if you have like a bad night's sleep, you become kind of pre-diabetic temporarily. So it has such a massive impact on any kind of receptor sensitivity, which is staggering when you think about the receptors have like your immune system, your mood, your hormones. Every single thing that goes on in your body is to do with chemicals and receptors. So if those receptors aren't responsive, if you have a bad night's sleep, they are not responsive, everything in your body slows down, everything becomes slightly less effective, and your body, it has such a wide-reaching impact. Then when you sleep, it's all reversed. So you have more energy, you have a higher mood, your immune system's stronger, your stress resilience is stronger, your hormones they work more efficiently, and your energy systems, your recovery, they are more effective as well. All from 8 hours sleep. It's great. There's a very crude saying, like, there's not much that can't be fixed with a good 8 hours. Literally just getting a good sleep. But again, there are things that will contribute to getting that good night's sleep. So it's looking at how to facilitate that sleep, because it's all well and good saying you need to sleep more. If someone's struggling to sleep, we need to look at why. And so that then be, we look at all those contributing factors as well.
It's really, really interesting. It's a fascinating topic, and could talk to you about it all day. But it's one of those areas. I think sleep is one of those areas that just people don't really think of as impacting their day or impacting their, your whole. It has a has a massive impact on how you digest food as well, and weight gain is caused. A big cause of weight gain is from sleep, lack of sleep. Your ability to process food during the day is impacted by your inability to sleep and to put your body into that stasis that it needs every evening. I'm
sure everyone knows that feeling when you've had a bad night's sleep. All you want to do is eat cake and chocolate biscuits. And that's that like insulin response kind of kicking in.
Definitely.
But yeah,
and we go for the things that we're craving to give us that energy, but actually what it's doing is the opposite. It's making you feel worse. So the first thing you go grab is grab caffeine, which just accelerates your heart, makes you feel even more hyper, but it doesn't actually address, the fact that the reason why you're actually feeling the way you are is because you haven't slept.
Good old-fashioned sleep fixes everything.
Have a power nap during the day, and that will be just as effective.
Exactly. Definitely make you feel better.
So it's been really, really great talking to you. I just want to kind of finish off with talking about your nutrition service and the service you offer to your clients. So should we just talk about kind of what you offer in terms of service and what your focus is over?
Yes. So basically, we've already kind of like chatted a bit about kind of what things I like to focus on. So the stress, the weight loss, fatigue, burnout, the microbiome, so any kind of digestive support is what I tend to focus on. Obviously, there are other things that come into that as well. So it might be looking at hormone side of things. But it is a very much system wide, but those are the kind of things they're focusing on. So my consultations are all run online because I think it gives people a lot more freedom to fit it in around their working life. Obviously, I like managing stress, so I don't want to be a stress to other people. I think that's a bit counterproductive. So I run either 6-week or 12-week packages at the moment, and I'm looking at developing online programs. And those programs, they address, as we've said, all-encompassing aspects. So it'll look at diet, it'll look at lifestyle, and it's very personalized to you. So we have an initial discovery call, which there's no strings, there's no obligation. It's sitting down with a cup of coffee, 15 to 20 minutes, and just getting to know each other, how we work together. My methods, what they want out of a nutritional program. So that's kind of how we start. Then we go through an initial consultation where I find out a little bit more about them, dig a little bit deeper. And then in the 12-week program, we then catch up once a month. And this just gives time for the plan to either work or not work. We'd meet up after that month, discuss through these things, and then adapt the plan. So it's always that trial and error throughout the program. As I said, I have my clients emailing me, just so it's that constant contact. So if something is going right, if something's not going right, if we need to move the appointment, it just means that it's that continued support. So the 12-week one is my main program, because it takes, as you said, changes don't come in a day, they don't come in a week, they don't even come in a month. So sometimes my clients are like, yeah, not much has happened. So I'm like, okay, great, we'll carry on, but we'll also try doing this as well. So it's 21 days to make a habit. So we get those habits and then we adapt them, but the changes come after kind of 3 to 6 months. So that's why I like having that 12-week program, because towards the end, people are seeing that they've got the tools, they've got the skills, they're seeing the work. We've adapted the program enough that they know what they're doing and they know what works, and then they go off by themselves. I am really excited about launching, hopefully either towards the end of the year or into the new year, some online programs, but they're in the works.
That's it. No, I mean, as I said, it's an area that I have had lots of people say on this podcast and outside of it, that kind of nutrition is an area that you can't coach, but they feel kind of exposed in terms of they know how to train, but they don't know how to eat the right foods at the right times. So I'm sure there's lots of listeners that will want to take up the opportunity. I'll put in the description your details. But yeah, and you've got a newsletter which I've read, I've signed up to and I've read, and it's really well put together. It's a fascinating document that you send around. So again, I'll put some details as to how to sign up for that. But yeah, it's been great talking to you. Really pleased to talk to you, and it's been there's been some real insight into kind of nutrition and lifestyle, which I'm sure will be a benefit to a lot of people that listen to this podcast.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me to come on, and it's been incredible to chat to you this morning. And I've learned from the chats that we've had in the past. I've learned a lot just talking to you about training and getting that different aspect. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.